As quickly as possible, I'm going to run through most of the things that you need to know about scholarly peer-reviewed sources. Good place to start is to click on that Rutgers Libraries link. And remember, you still need to click through the research guide link on the page that you get to this. On that page, there is a tab here titled Paradigms, Finding Scholarly Articles. In professional discourse, paradigm is a term that refers to both the theory that animates certain approaches to certain problems, needs, or opportunities, and the practical means by which those needs, opportunities, and problems are responded to. The theory side of it, where we find the explanations for why to do things in a certain way, and why we would want to take a certain approach to a problem or an opportunity, is generally going to be found in research literature. And that research literature is typically what we find under the term scholarly peer-reviewed research. The library has a brief infographic for distinguishing between what would be considered scholarly and then what would be considered not scholarly, or what librarians often refer to as popular. Not popular meaning, what everybody wants to look at, but popular at its root, radical meaning, which is for the people, for ordinary people. So that means that scholarly stuff is not for ordinary people, and it's not. The audience for scholarly literature is going to be other professional researchers. The writers are going to be themselves professional researchers. So scholarly peer-reviewed literature refers to research material that's written by professional researchers for other professional researchers. This is very different than most other media, which is going to be written by professional writers who are typically journalists, who specialize in the writing of things, not necessarily the topic, and the writing is for a general public, not for specialists, but for anybody who wants to read and become knowledgeable. So both types of sources are really useful for your projects. You're going to need both. You're going to need some literature written from a general audience perspective, a general readership, and you're going to need some material written for a very specialized professional readership. So how do you know what you're looking at? Well, you can look at the information on this infographic. Other libraries have other infographics. So here we can see that scholarly literature is going to have a reference list at the end of the article. Typically, the popular sources will not. A scholarly article is going to have very few ads. Instead, it's going to have graphs and charts and lots of math being demonstrated, as opposed to photographs and advertisements. Scholarly articles are long, etc., 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 etc. But I think it's better just to take a look. So here is a article that's been returned from a search in the library's quick search toolbar, and this is obviously a scholarly source. How is it obvious? Well, I'm looking at it, I'm seeing a whole lot of authors. Often in the sciences, scholarly peer-reviewed articles will have a long list of authors. This is less true in the humanities, but in the social sciences and the hard sciences, you'll find that's the case. It has a very specific and not at all flashy title, Effects of a Classroom-Based Educational Resource on Adolescent Mental Health Literacy, a cluster randomized control trial. And then the title of the publication, Journal of Adolescence. Journal or quarterly or something like that is very often going to be in the title, and they're always, in terms of the name of the publication, the journal, and the title of the article, they're very precise as to the content, and not at all any effort to be catchy or attractive as popular literature would be. This becomes increasingly apparent when we view the actual article. which the library database returns to us as a full-text PDF. So here's the title. Here's the authors. Note that all of the authors come with their professional association, which is not something you're going to find typically in popular literature, but in scholarly peer-reviewed literature, the scholars are going to list their academic affiliations. Then there are some key components. Scholarly peer-reviewed literature typically will have an abstract that describes generally the content of the material. The material is going to be very citation heavy. It's going to be dense. It's going to be difficult for anybody outside the field to understand. Lots of tables, lots of math, lots of charts. And then, of course, end with a very long list of references. So if all of those apply, chances are you're working with a scholarly article. Not everything published in the Journal of Adolescence is going to be a scholarly peer-reviewed research article. They do like book reviews and editorials and stuff like that too. However, if it has lots of authors, if it has lots of text, and lots of references, yeah, you're on the right track. How do you read something like this? That's going to be very important for working with this for the formal report and then for your proposal assignment. You're going to have to take advantage and make use of these research sources. And they're not easy because they're written in a very dense professional language. They're intended for people who are already well versed in this field and understand why this article is being written and what its objectives are and the like, as opposed to the general the audience. But there are ways to get around that. For instance, to go back to the abstract tells you briefly what the article is about. So you'd want to start here, right? Why is the article being written? Well, evidence suggests that poor mental health literacy is a key barrier to help seeking for mental health difficulties in adolescents. And they have some research background. And they have an explanation of the study. Participants were assigned pre- and post-intervention or assessed pre- and post-intervention and a 6-month follow-up. And it has some indication of the results that they got, that literacy improved and stigma was reduced, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's going to be an introductory section that will talk about the reasons why the study was done, so it's useful to get a handle on that. Once again, it's going to be dense, it's going to be difficult to get through, but it's still going to be written at a more general level than the main body of the article. The objectives too. Now, the actual experimental method may not be all that useful for you, and it's going to be fairly jargon heavy and math heavy. Still, you might want to scroll through it just in case, just to see if there's anything in there that's useful for your project that you want to pull out and use. But I recommend skimming through the methods. I recommend even skimming through some of the results because, once again, these are very densely statistical based without a strong background in statistics and this field. You're not likely to get a lot of information from it. However, most scholarly peer-reviewed articles will end with a discussion section or a conclusion section or results, that's couched in more general language than the mathematical statistical information. And here you're going to want to read through to get a sense of what they found out and how they think this information should be applied. And that's going to give you a lot of information for your projects. So a narrow, targeted, strategic reading in these articles is possible to get at some of the core information that you need to be able to use effectively. So look at the abstract, look at the introduction, and then look at the concluding section. Skim through the rest with an idea, an understanding that you're not going to be able to get much out of it, but still want to look to see if there's anything there that might be useful. And then come to grips with why the article is written. What's its background? What problems is it trying to address? And then what did it find out? And then how do the researchers think this information should be or could be applied moving forward? But rarely are you going to be in a situation where you're looking at an article and you don't know whether it's scholarly or not. Because the way the library databases work, you get to choose which articles are scholarly in a sense. Here's the search that I did. Just dropped in there just a quick and dirty search: mental health, adolescents, medical literacy, the same topic that I've been using for demonstrations all semester long. Now, as it turns out, much of the articles that were returned are scholarly peer-reviewed articles, simply because it's a fairly scholarly research-based topic. But in Quick Search, if I want to make sure that what I'm looking at are peer-reviewed scholarly articles, I can just click this button here, and that will limit the search returns to only those journals that publish peer-reviewed scholarly research. Now, as I said before, not everything published in these journals is research. They have some other stuff too. But by and large, their purpose is to publish research. The bulk of what they publish is research. And so nearly all of these results are going to be scholarly peer-reviewed research. So bam, right away you know that this is going to be something that's useful to you. Now, as we discussed before, the Quick Search is a great tool to start, but you're probably going to need to get into these issues a little more deeply. And so you'll want to go to the Article Databases tab on our research guide. And here you'll find the article databases broken up into subject categories that make it easy to kind of determine, where you should be going. And they'll have a number of links to databases underneath each category. You'll want to read through and kind of get a sense of which ones you'll want to go to first. I'm going to pick up on Academic Search Premier, which is an excellent source for all kinds of sources, broadly applied, but in particular scholarly peer-reviewed articles. So once again, up here I can go through the search. Mental health. Once again, note the search options that come up as you're typing in your search terms. And so I'm going to want the broadest possible search here: adolescents or teenagers or young adults. I want all of them in there. And so we get 426, and I can limit this to scholarly peer-reviewed. Down here, if your browser is not big enough to see the full thing. Doesn't change a whole lot in the search. It did knock out a few things. I've still got a few hundred of them to take a closer look at. So that may be a lot. You may want to reduce by publication date. There's a slider here to do that. So I could be looking at things, past 10 years is probably pretty good. Still doesn't narrow things down as much as I'd like for a nice tidy search, but at least I know I'm being fairly comprehensive, and you don't want to leave anything out that might help your project. Okay, so I want to look at these two articles really quickly. They're both published in academic journals of scholarly research. So top one here, this is the Journal of Adolescence. This one here is published in POLOS 1, which is a journal of medical research. But there are big differences. There's one major difference, anyways, that concerns you, the student, as a practical difference. First one here, or the second one here, the database returns in PDF full text. So if you click on that link, you'll get the full text of the article, and there it is. So yeah, dull descriptive title, multiple authors with their academic affiliations. It's got an abstract. Not much in the way of charts and math, but it's got some, and then all of the other things that we expect. The other article, though, this other article doesn't have full text PDF attached. Oh my gosh, what are you gonna do? Well, in the Rutgers Library databases, if the research database doesn't return a full text of the article. It will have this little button here, this little applet. Applet, meaning a smaller application, an applet, called Get It at R. If you click the Get It at R, the library will quickly scan through all of its subscriptions in order to determine where you can go in order to find full text of the article. In the vast majority of cases, it will take you right to it. Sometimes they'll take you to a list of potential sources and you have to click around and try, some of which will lead you to the article, some of which will lead to dead ends. And if you ever have any problems with it, you can just contact the librarian. They are, in fact, right here if you go back to your database citation, and you can just put your question in here and they'll be able to help you right away. Every once in a while, the Get It at R button doesn't find anything for you. And when it does, it'll give you something like this. So your first step is to sign in to your library account. If you don't have an account, if you've never used the library accounts before, you'll have to set one up, but it's pretty quick. And then you click on Article Delivery, and this takes you to a interlibrary loan service where they will contact a participating library that does have access to this article. That library will digitize the article for you. So, download it if it's only available in electronic form, or if it's only available in print form, they'll photocopy it and then scan it, or whatever. They'll email this to you within a few days, and you'll have the article. Usually the form is entirely populated by the Get It at R applet when you click on the article delivery button. But if not, you can just go right back and review the material up top here, which describes this basic citation information for the article, the authors, obviously the title of the article, the name of the periodical, its publication date, page numbers, and if necessary, the DOI. All right, that's about enough for now, other than to remind you of office hours every Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon at this link. See you there.